What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today's video is going to be all about how to beat ability ZARD, and this is for the standard format of Ultra Prism through Hidden Fates. So first off, why is ability ZARD significant? Why should you worry about beating this deck? Why should this be on your radar? Well, according to journalism and statistics site PTCGstats.com, also known as PokeStats, ability ZARD has been the #1 CP earning deck at League Cups from August 31st to September 22nd, which spans over 4 weekends of League Cups. The past weekend of League Cups has not been reported yet on PTCGstats.com, but I would assume that if it's not the #1 CP earning deck, then it would at least be fairly high. And we also had AC Regionals this past weekend, Cologne Regionals, and Sao Paulo special event. So the CP reported for League Cups might also be a little bit lower this past weekend. But ability ZARD has been performing really well ever since Worlds, and it kind of took over League Cups for a while there. And this is just showing the actual reports from PTCGstats.com for August 31st through September 4th, September 7th through 8th, September 14th through 15th, and September 21st through September 22nd. And although there are several variables that go into an archetype earning CP at League Cups, these results are empirical data that ability ZARD has been both popular and successful at North American League Cups for about a month now. So we're going to break down the archetype. On the screen here, you'll see a lot of the key cards in the ability ZARD archetype. These are all included in every ability ZARD list. And we'll start out with the Ninetales. So Ninetales with 9 Temptations. Once during your turn, you may discard 2 fire energy cards from your hand. If you do, switch one of your opponent's benched Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So this recurring gust effect that Ninetales has for the cost of fire energy, which you have plenty of in these archetypes, is very strong because Guzma is not in the format. Custom catchers can be clunky to play, and decks don't really enjoy playing custom catchers. And this is also on your board that you can use every turn as long as you have the 2 fire energy that it costs. So this is a very strong ability. It's very disruptive to target down opposing Pokemon on your opponent's bench. This format wasn't really built upon going into the Worlds format, since we lost cards like Lycanroc GX and Guzma that made gusting a lot easier. People thought their bench Pokemon were a little safer. And this is an aggressive archetype with an aggressive ability like 9 Temptations, and this gust effect is very important to the archetype and also to understanding how to beat the archetype. ZARD is a 270 HP basic Pokemon that can do 230 for 4 energy, 200 for 3, or 300 damage for 6 energy. It has a plethora of attacks, basically 4 different attacks if you count Double Blaze GX as 2, since it can hit at either 3 or 6 energy. So this Pokemon is very versatile, it's bulky, and it puts out a lot of damage fairly quickly because of the energy acceleration that fire has. In addition to the ZARD GX, there's also Heatran GX, Victini Prism Star, Turtonator, Volcanion from Unbroken Bonds. There's a lot, Baby Blounds as well, Baby Blacephalon from Unbroken Bonds. There's a lot of single prize attackers that you can put into this deck and that are popular in this archetype. And then you have the Heatran GX and the ZARD Tag Team GX. So you have single, double, and triple prize attackers. Whereas going into this format, again, this deck kind of breaks a lot of the guidelines that we thought this format set. Because going in, we had these tag team decks like Green's ZARD, Guardian, or even Turbozard, but lists before Worlds were trying to focus on the ZARD. And then we had Blacephalon GX, which was focused on GX Pokemon, Pikarom, which was focused on Tag Team Pokemon, Mew Boxes, which was focused on Tag Team Pokemon, and then single prizers were kind of kept out other than Malamar. And what made this deck very strong, there's many things making it very strong, but the ability to have single prize, double prize, and triple prize attackers all working cohesively in the same deck. So you can't really counter this Reshizard deck by playing single prizers, because at best you'll just trade evenly most of the time. And also Victini, its infinity attack, in addition to doing a lot of damage potentially, it can also replenish your deck with basic energy cards. Welder, of course, this makes the archetype possible. The supporter card, attach up to 2 fire energy cards from your hand to one of your Pokemon. If you do, draw 3 cards. So Welder is very, very good, but this deck's reliancy on Welder is something that you should keep in note. That's going to be important in trying to counter this archetype. And then the support Pokemon, Jirachi and Dedenne GX. Jirachi's Stellar Wish that lets you look at the top 5 once a turn and get a trainer card, and then Dene Change that just aggressively draws you 6 cards. So all things to keep in mind when trying to beat this deck. So Ninetales is a very, very important part of their archetype, of their deck, of their strategy, and so capitalizing on that strategy, something that the ability ZARD assumes they have, taking that away from them is very strong. So Stealthy Hood can take away, effectively, the 9 Temptations ability. Stealthy Hood reads, prevent all effects of your opponent's abilities done to the Pokemon this card is attached to. Remove any such existing effects. So this is very strong on the Pokemon shown here on the screen. If you have 2 Malamars on your bench, Ability ZARD likes to gust and target down Malamars in that matchup, but if you put Stealthy Hood on each of your Malamars, those Malamars can't be gusted up, and they have to deal with other Pokemon, and you get to keep your Psychic Recharges on the board. So, going into Worlds, when I was testing Ability ZARD, however, my list was very different from the Limitless lists that would influence the popular Ability ZARD archetypes now. It was a lot different, a bit weaker, didn't have as much energy, but what's important to the archetype was we knew that we would be able to just gust down Malamars, so that matchup felt very good. If the Malamar player chooses to play Stealthy Hoods, that is not an option no longer. So the Stealthy Hood's really good there, and the same thing for the rest of these cards. In the Guardian matchup, the opponent can Kaleidostorm all the energy onto a benched Guardy, and then you would have to Stealthy Hood before, but it could go onto a benched Guardian that has Stealthy Hood. Same thing with Reshizard, kind of. You can just sit behind Volks and other Reshis if you're playing Green's Reshi, and Stealthy Hood and Welder and attach to a bench Reshi and just let them go down on prizes, and then Stamp Plant comes in. But most importantly, your Stealthy Hood is protecting the Pokemon from 9 Temptations. And I actually saw Stealthy Hood in Pika-Rom this past weekend at AC, put on the Raichu, since that's a really important card versus Ability ZARD. If you Stealthy Hood the Raichu before full blitzing onto it, that can be really detrimental to the Ability ZARD player, because they bank on being able to gust up that Raichu and either knocking it out or at least partially damaging it. So just shutting down their Ninetales even partially is really, really strong with Stealthy Hood. So next we're going to be looking at Reset Stamp and Power Plant. Ability ZARD is an aggressive archetype that will often take an early prize lead, which leaves it susceptible to Reset Stamp. The decks are usually built around Welder and rely on Welder almost every turn to have sufficient energy. So they like to have big hands, even build their hands off the prize cards, then Welder and build their hand off of that Welder. Stellar Wish, maybe hold a Welder for next turn. And then the plant makes Stamp Plant a disruptive combo, since it also relies on the Dedenne GX. If they didn't hit the Welder from the past Welder and the Stellar Wish or the prize cards, they just start all over again with the Dedenne GX. So an Ability ZARD taking an aggressive lead can actually result in negative effects for them if you are able to pull off the Stamp Plant combo, or even just the Stamp, or even just the Plant. Since the Ability ZARD deck now only runs 4 supporters, 4 Welder. So if you can effectively lower their hand size and then restrict them from using the Dedenne GX, they might not be able to hit a Welder next turn. If their prizes are very low, chances are they're not going to be able to hit a welder and their energy next turn, since you are power planning, which takes away their giant hearth, and stamp, which takes away their big hand, and then they can't dead a change to try to get into a new hand. It's very, very negative for the ability Zard, and that's actually why Pico Rom ended up being a really good deck this past weekend, in my eyes at least, since in testing, Pico Rom on paper didn't look like it was very good versus ability, but once you actually tested it and Pico Rom was playing 3 stamps, the stamps really hurt, and also Green Rushy, which on paper didn't look like a great matchup, but I'll talk about that with this next slide. So these are 3 unfavored matchups in my opinion when the lists are built correctly. These are unfavored for ability Zard. If you're playing these decks, it's favored versus ability Zard. And then also you'll notice on the lower part of the colored boxes, I've listed the lists that I'm referencing from limitlesstcg.com if you want to check them out. So the Malamar list is the 64th place list from AC Regionals, piloted by Hunter Butler. He played 2 Stealthy Hoods and a tag. The list was very consistent. I actually got bodied by it round 3, I think, and I was playing ability Zard. And the Stealthy Hoods on the Malamars, and the tag on maybe the 3rd Inkay or the 3rd Malamar. So if I wanted to take out a Malamar, I had to hit into a tag. The Stealthy Hoods really shut you down. And then the matchup's already so close that if your opponent gets to keep their Psychic recharges, I think it turns into favorable for Malamar. But yeah, like I was talking about on one of the previous slides, the Stealthy Hoods just shut down your 9 Temptations, which is really, really important. And then if you're forced to hit into spell tags, that helps them out even more with damage. Also, Hunter Butler's list played 4 custom catchers, which Malamar lists have not been doing usually. At least the successful Malamar lists, we haven't been seeing a lot with custom catchers. And the custom catchers can just take out the Ninetales if needed if they don't hit their Stealthy Hoods, or the custom catchers can just go for a GX Pokemon and kind of mess up the prize trade from what you planned on it being. Basically, this is all about ability Zard has these assumptions, like they're going to gust up important Pokemon, they're going to be ahead on the prize trade, they're going to get to draw cards, and beating the deck is all about ruining those assumptions. The next deck is Pico Rom with 3 Stamp, which is Will Jenkins' list from TeamRocketHideout.com, but Ryan Antonucci got 5th place at AC Regionals, and Benjamin Branch got 8th place, I believe. So they both finished in top 8 with it. And the Pico Rom with 3 Stamp is just really good because your opponent's usually going to knock out a 3 prize Pokemon, either Pico Rom or Raichu off the bat, and then you just stamp them down to a low hand and full blitz again, or you paralyze them, or you even get off the Raichu GX attack or custom catcher something important, whatever it may be. Stamp down to 3 is really, really detrimental to ability Zard, especially when you have these big threats that you have to deal with in one turn, or they're going to blow you up with something like Tag Bolt. And the last unfavored matchup I'm highlighting here is Green Rushy Zard. So in testing the week prior to AC, I actually realized that Green Rushy Zard was favored versus ability Zard. I think it just became kind of an assumed fact almost that Green Rushy Zard was negative versus ability Zard, since ability Zard was faster and you could just flood the board with attackers and energy while Green Rushy Zard had to take more time to do things. But simply adding 1 Stealthy Hood into Green Rushy Zard makes it so you force your opponent to deal with what's in the active, and after they've taken enough prize cards, you stamp plant them and start running through their board with a Rushy Zard. And the list I've referenced here is the 1st place Campinas. TCG, and I highly suggest checking that out. My current list is only a couple cards off of that for some preference things. But yeah, so these lists are all pretty favored versus ability Zard, in my opinion, if played correctly and if you play the lists that I've referenced here. And I think they all capitalize in a few different ways on how to beat ability Zard, ruining ability Zard's assumptions on the big hand, the gusting effect, the trading favorably with single prize attackers, or even with the Heatran GX with a 2 prize attacker. So I think the most important things about beating ability Zard to keep in mind are ruining their assumed attributes. These things that they assume they will have throughout the game. So the Ninetales gusting effect, the large hand, being able to use Welder, being able to use the Dene to try to draw into the Welder, which Stealthy Hood, Reset Stamp, and Power Plant all pretty effectively ruin that. And these decks are the best, some of the best ways to use those cards to take advantage of ability Zard's weaknesses. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on Ability Rushy Zard and how to effectively combat it. Hopefully this helps you out for your upcoming League Cups, or even maybe Knoxville Regionals or other events around the world that I may not be cognizant of at this current moment. Be sure to check out flipsidegaming.com and use code Celio for 10% off of anything in the entire store. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.